For today's video, I decided to pick a previously converted creature randomly and give it more polish. The RNG told me to take a look at the Dark Tree. This is indeed one of the very unremarkable D&D monsters. While technically this is a Forgotten Realms creature, nothing prevents you from using it in any other setting. So what is a Dark Tree? Dark Trees were created by a certain wizard to be his trend-like servants, but of course the experiment went awry and the wizard himself was eaten by his creations. A Dark Tree looks like a 20-foot tall cypress tree with two 7-yard long arms, a pair of evil eyes and a maw. It can move, but only very slowly, so it relies on its limited camouflage ability when hunting prey. Speaking of prey, while the Dark Trees can survive on water and photosynthesis, they really like draining blood from living, preferably sapient creatures. Dark Trees also can subvert the minds of potential victims from afar with magic. Finally, their bark is covered in slime that acts as flame retardant. The tree itself is vulnerable to cold. That's all I have to work with here. So how do I build a tree? I will start with the body as always. You know, since the main inspiration behind this video series was the Garden of Evil book, I might take a look there for ideas. A size modifier +3 tree should have strength in the ballpark of 35 and should be pretty tough. I decided to give it health 13. The tree is quite clumsy and barely sapient. Realistically speaking, a tree of such size should have around 140 HP, but I decided to cut it down to 75 HP. I am not aiming for extreme realism after all. The Dark Tree is made of wood, obviously. I will give it DR2 and combustible. It is also homogeneous and has no blood, no head and no neck. It does have limbs. To get the desired reach of 7 yards, I will have to increase the effective size modifier by 3, so I will give it long arms 3. It uses root-like legs for locomotion, but I cannot really work out how many of them there are on the picture, so I decided to go with 4. So I gave it extra legs, 4 legs with cannot kick. Also, I gave it the cannot jump quirk, decreased its basic move to 1 and gave it taboo trait fixed basic move. The branches might qualify as blunt claws, but look at the picture, they are so thin. I decided to give the Dark Tree the striking surface perk instead. They don't look too agile, so I gave the tree ham-fisted 1 and bad grip 2. The blood drain ability is very simple, just the basic vampiric bite advantage. Before I get to the more complex abilities, let's talk about the metabolism and the life cycle. Being a plant, the Dark Tree absorbs oxygen through the leaves, so I gave it doesn't breathe with oxygen combustion. There are multiple ways of handling photosynthesis, but I went with the one from GURPS template toolkit 2 races. I gave the Dark Tree doesn't eat or drink with accessibility only with daily sunlight and food only. It still likes drinking blood, so I'll give it an appropriate quirk. The lore also says that it requires blood to procreate, but that's not something you put on the template. The Dark Tree doesn't sleep, and since it is said to be a nocturnal hunter, I gave it night vision 5. Plants typically have regrowth, the most overpriced GURPS advantage. I have no information about the lifespan, so I will go with extended lifespan too. Now, GURPS usually gives plants immunity to metabolic hazards, and so does D&D. But aren't there plant diseases, or maybe even plant poisons? I am not sure how to treat it, but I decided to keep it simple and just gave the Dark Tree immunity to metabolic hazards. Specialized plant diseases and poisons might not even be metabolic hazards, but have some other nature. I'm not a botanist, so I do not really know. Finally, let's get to what is merely a small part of the description without any mechanics in D&D, but what will be something special in GURPS: bark. Garden of Evil opened my eyes and I understood that ablative DR is the perfect way to represent bark. So let's give the dark tree DR15 with ablative that has to be chipped away before the tougher core can be damaged. But the dark tree has special bark, remember? First of all, let's give it vulnerability to cold, and then think about how to represent the special slime. The lore says that the bark is covered in slime that acts as flame retardant. And I could have removed the combustible disadvantage and given the dark tree DR against fire, but since we actually have mechanics for chipping away the bark, let's link it all together. I will give the dark tree DR10 against fire, limited with accessibility, not when bark armor is depleted. 2 levels of slippery with the same limitation, and no combustible with the same limitation. So now you can chip away the bark on some hit locations and then set them ablaze. Isn't that cool? Finally, there are some other minor features. First, the confusion ability. I'll just give it the hallucination spell as a spell-like ability. It's simple and it does work well to make the prey fall into its hands. Then it is said to enjoy tormenting the prey before eating it, so let's give it sadism. Finally, the description says that anyone looking at the dark tree can feel evil emanate from it. I think that's the perfect opportunity to give it ugly with a universal enhancement. And look at that, we're already done. What was a very boring monster that could only grapple and drain blood has become something more interactive. The character can chip away the armor and then maybe even set it on fire or exploit the weakness to cold. The dark tree still isn't something that I would be excited to use in a game, but I feel that now it's much better, and I also learned something new about making plant monsters. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.